Okay, we're going to be beginning in the book of Ezekiel, actually not reading out of the book so much. We read chapter 23 last week, and it was full of all the things God said he was going to do. And does anybody remember what the main complaint was against the children of Israel? They were unfaithful to him, and he compared them to a unfaithful wife. And I pointed out that there is a harlot in the book of Revelation that's compares just like how God was treating the children of Israel, claiming, accusing them of harlotry, essentially going after all these other gods instead of the one true and living God. And so it shouldn't surprise us to see in the New Testament references back to the Old Testament. Almost every single book, maybe every single book in the New Testament has references back to Old Testament things. Revelation is no different. And people try to take these things and apply them off somewhere, read into them, all that kind of stuff, and try to make it apply to today. I mean, they've been doing that for over 100 years that I know of, with the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, and I'm not sure who all else, but they've said, oh, it's going to happen in our generation. And then their generation would come and go, and oh, we mistook this one. Here, now we know it's going to be now in this generation, and it's just gone every single generation. There's people saying it's going to happen, Jesus coming anytime soon. And one day, if they keep doing that, one day they're going to be right. But they're still false prophets because they're not taking the scriptures as they should be. But anyway, so now I want to continue reading from that gentleman that I've been reading from for all these prophets. And wherever you see the quote marks, it's him quoting from the book of Ezekiel, and he usually gives, let me get my pointer, like right here, and right here it gives the verse references where he's reading from. So anyway, he says, God will punish the leaders of Israel who were like shepherds that neglected their sheep and allowed them to be scattered. And so here's another illustration, just like the harlot. Here's another illustration of shepherds with sheep, and the leaders were not shepherding their sheep like they should be, and they got scattered, and really scattered off into captivity. God promises that, this is a quote from Ezekiel, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. I will rescue them from all the places where they are scattered. I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel. I will judge between one sheep and another. Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture? Must you also trample the rest of the pasture with your feet? I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them, and I will make a covenant of peace with them and rid the land of wild beasts. The people will be secured in their land. Now, this is obviously any references to David. Now, had David already lived by the time Ezekiel wrote? Yeah, he had lived at about 1000 BC, and now we're all the way down to in the 500s, like 590 or whatever. So it's been 500 years since David. So obviously he's not talking about David. David's not coming back alive, but he's talking about the Messiah who is going to be like David. And so this is pardon? Well, I'm not actually, this quote here is from Genesis or Ezekiel 34. But what I'm doing is reading what that guy wrote down, and he put it pretty concisely. So rather than me trying to go through it all, I've copied his article on this. So anyway, he's referring to the Messiah. Obviously, it's not literally David. It's the Messiah. And there isn't a scholar out there that doesn't agree that when he's talking about my servant David, he's talking about the Messiah, Jesus. And he says, I'll rid the land of wild beasts. He's not talking about real, lions and that sort of thing. He's talking about the beasts that can destroy the people. And so just like in another place, is it Isaiah 2, where it says, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and nations will not lift up sword against nation. It's going to be peace when this comes about. And so he says, for I will take you out of the nations. This is again God talking from chapter 36. I will take you out of the nations. I will cleanse you from all impurities. This is also messianic, talking about like Isaiah 2 again, many people should come and say, let us go up to the mountain of the house of the Lord. And it talks about the cleansing of the people. And this is the same thing. It's Jesus bringing forgiveness of sin and cleansing from all the spiritual impurities. I will remove from you your heart of stone. This gospel that Jesus is gonna bring will melt hearts, and people will live in the land that I gave to your forefathers. So anyway, he keeps going. Ezekiel is led in a vision to a valley full of dry bones. This is, I think, chapter 37. Ezekiel himself is led in a vision to a valley of dry bones, which symbolizes all those people that are in exile. The bones come together, the flesh appears, and they come to life. And the Lord promises a national resurrection and reunification. He says, these bones, this is a quote from Ezekiel, these bones are the whole house of Israel. I am going to open up your graves and bring you up from them. I will make one nation in the land. There will be one king over all of them, and they will never again be two nations or be divided into two kingdoms. My servant David will be king. I will make a covenant of peace with them, and it will be an everlasting covenant. So again, this is messianic. When the new Israel comes, when God brings everyone together under one king, which is Jesus, my servant David, then there will be a new covenant, and it'll be an everlasting covenant. And so again, this is from Ezekiel. And then going on, referring to spiritual Israel, Ezekiel describes a vision from God of the new temple to be built on Mount Zion. The glory of the Lord fills the temple. The Levites, in particular the Zadokites, are restored to the temple. He describes offerings and holy days which differ from the Pentateuch, boundaries of the land, and the division among the 12 tribes. And Jerusalem will be called Yahweh Shammah, which means the Lord is there. And remember, one of the names that is given to Jesus is Emmanuel, which means God with us. God is there. So he's talking, he has a large section of Ezekiel that's messianic, talking about Jesus's time. So anyway, when we get into studying Revelation, we'll be talking about Ezekiel, because there's quite a bit of apocalyptic language in there that people try to make apply to our future, not just their future. Anyway, anybody got any comments about Ezekiel, that something I might have left out? If not, we're going to move on to Daniel. Daniel was almost the same time as Ezekiel. Ezekiel and Daniel were both in Babylon captivity at the same time. Anyway, this says, Daniel is the author of this book according to Jesus, and therefore the book was written about 530 BC after the capture of Babylon by Cyrus. And so this actually puts him, I said it was about the same time, but it puts him in the same captivity, but a little bit later than Ezekiel. This was after the capture of Babylon by Cyrus. Some disbelieve the likelihood of such a long-range prophecy and place the date during the Maccabean period, but none of us would agree with that. It is in Hebrew and Aramaic, and it apparently prophesies the four great empires: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greek, and Roman empires. And the theme is God's sovereignty. It consists of historical narrative and apocalyptic material that is revelatory and defined as symbolic, visionary, prophetic literature, usually composed during the periods of oppression and being chiefly eschatological, which means talking about end times. That's how Daniel is viewed, eschatological in theological content, and intended to provide encouragement. This is what Daniel, being at the end of the captivity, when he talks about this stuff, the people are totally discouraged. And so the things that happen to Daniel are meant to encourage people. Daniel has the encouraging thing about Daniel in the lion's den, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, and how they're victorious, that God spares them. And then he talks, as we'll see, about a vision that the king had, that God is showing them what's going to happen, starting with Nebuchadnezzar and going on down through. So anyway, we'll just continue to go with this description of Daniel. Daniel was exiled from Judah in 605, and he's recruited by Nebuchadnezzar to serve in his court. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, and Daniel succeeds in avoiding the defilement that would arise from eating the royal food. They offer him all the pleasantries of the kingdom, and he says, "No, I'll just eat my regular food, thanks." And that got him in trouble with some people. Not only that, but other things as well. But he masters the Babylonian literature on astrology and divination from dreams. Nebuchadnezzar wants his dream interpreted and threatens to kill all the astrologers who cannot explain it. But Daniel volunteers to do so. And after receiving a revelatory vision during the night, Daniel explains the dream. So we have to put this in the context. The first people in 606 or 605 BC, the first people that went into captivity, it was all the cream of the crop, all the educated people, the ones considered highly useful to people in Babylon. And Daniel was among them because he was a bright person. And then he got educated in all the ways by Nebuchadnezzar's best teachers that they had. And so he learned a lot of stuff. And that's what made him so that Nebuchadnezzar would even listen to him to begin with. Nebuchadnezzar knew of him already, and I guess he was probably considered among the astrologers, even though he wasn't like the rest of them. Anyway, in order to save himself, and it saved all the other astrologers too, but he interpreted this dream, and it says that Daniel explains the dream, and the king had seen a statue with gold head. The statue had a gold head, and that, in his interpretation, he shows that referred to Nebuchadnezzar and the Neo-Babylonians. And so this gold head referred to the nation of Neo-Babylonia, just means the new Babylon. And with Nebuchadnezzar at the head, that was the head of gold in this vision. And then the chest and arms were made out of silver, which refers to the Medo-Persian empires. After Babylon, Cyrus of Persia and Darius the Mede got together, and they overthrew the Babylonians and set up an empire what we call the Medo-Persian, because it was Media and Persia together, united together, creating this empire. And so first you have the Babylonians, then the Medo-Persians, and then the belly and the thighs of this statue were made out of bronze. And you notice each, as you go down the body, the head's gold, chest of silver, then the torso of bronze. It's going down in integrity. I don't know about integrity, but in the value, I guess you'd say, of the metals. And so these empires are kind of not one after the other, not as strong as the next one, not as impressive, I guess would be a better term, as the next one. And so then after the Medo-Persians, then the thighs were of bronze. Bronze is a very strong metal, but not as precious as the others. That refers, the next empire in line after the Medo-Persians was the Greek Empire. And the Greek Empire began with, what's his name? Was it Nabonidus? Anyway, the father of Alexander the Great. Can't remember his name, but then Alexander took over at a young age, and he's the one that really shined. I mean, in just a short time, he conquered more of the world than anybody else had ever conquered. And I think he died at the ripe old age of 26 or 7, somewhere in there, after having, led his armies to conquer essentially the entire known world at that time. And so it was a big, strong empire. And then following that was, it says that the feet were partly of clay, or the legs of iron, and the feet partly of clay and partly of iron, which shows degradation. It's like when they make iron, if they heat it up and pour it, maybe they pour it into a dirty tank with a bunch of dirt already in it. And so it's kind of strong, but still not, it's just falling apart essentially. And that perfectly describes the Roman Empire, how it was very strong at first, but then it crumbled. And, you can read books like The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, show how that all fell apart and everything. But anyway, so this says that a rock strikes the feet and the statue falls. So the feet, they're iron mixed with clay, are the weakest point, and this rock comes rolling down a hill and destroys the whole statue. And what that little hill is talking, or the little rock is talking about Jesus. That when he comes, he's going to, just like we know from history, Christianity overtook the world when it began, even so much so that one of the emperors, Charlemagne of Rome, became a Christian and made it the national religion. And so this kingdom of Jesus was really victorious over all. There were subjects of Jesus in every country in the world, just like we read about in Acts 2. There were people there from, the Parthians, the Medes, the Elamites, the parts of Phrygia, about Cyrene, Rome, Libya, all these places, and they all became Christians. Took the word of the Lord out to where they lived, and the Christianity spread through the whole world. So much so that Paul in the book of Colossians says that the gospel had been preached to everyone, every nation under heaven. So anyway, that's what this prophecy is referring to. And sure enough, people today are taking this and trying to describe other things besides what's what is obvious in there, doing anything they can to get it to apply to today or to the very near future. Anyway, Daniel interprets the dream, and says Daniel is rewarded for his interpretation. Daniel's Jewish colleagues, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were thrown into the furnace for punishment, but are rescued by a guardian angel. And then Nebuchadnezzar has another dream, a dream of a great tree that's cut down. And Daniel says, Nebuchadnezzar is the tree, and that he should renounce his sins and wickedness to continue his prosperity, which apparently he does. So he listened to Daniel and avoided this dream coming true that he had dreamed. So anyway, then in I almost said 19, in 539, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, gives a great banquet. He took over after Belshazzar, or after Nebuchadnezzar, but he wasn't anywhere near the man that Nebuchadnezzar was. Nebuchadnezzar was a really remarkable person, and that's how he was so successful as the Babylonian king. But after that, as often happens, the son doesn't measure up to the father, and so he has this big party, and during this party, it says suddenly the fingers of a human hand appear to write on the wall the words Mina, Mina, Tekel Upharsin. And I don't know why he quotes this, but it's not exactly the words that I know. But anyway, Mina, Mina, Tekel Upharsin. And what that means is you've been weighed in the balances and have been found wanting. And so, in other words, Belshazzar, you're not measuring up. And Daniel interprets this to mean that the Babylonian reign will come to an end and that the Medes and the Persians will take over. Soon, Darius the Mede, which is Cyrus, and Cyrus as well, indeed takes over Babylon. So that's from the book of Daniel. Then after that, Darius's men conspire against Daniel, and he's thrown into a lion's den, but he's protected by God's guardian angel, and the conspirators are punished instead and are eaten by the lions, after which Darius exalts Daniel's God. Just like happened in the book of Esther with Haman and Mordecai, how that Haman tried to get Mordecai killed on the gallows, and he ends up getting put on the gallows instead. This same kind of thing happens there. These guys, the underlings of Darius, the king of the Medo-Persian Empire, they're really jealous of Daniel already, and so they conspire and say, well, you need to pray to Darius, and Daniel says, I'm not going to do that, and so they get Darius to issue an edict that anybody that doesn't bow down to me is going to be killed. And so that puts Daniel in hot water. He gets thrown into the lion's den, and but as we all know, God spared him. And when Darius saw that, he's thinking, this is not just accident. This got to be a miracle. This guy must really know the true God. And so he throws the other guys into the lion's den, where they get eaten up. But then anyway, in 553, Daniel has a dream which he interprets. 4 great beasts come from the sea: a lion with eagle's wings, a cherub symbolizing the Neo-Babylonians, a bear. First there's a lion with eagle's wings, then a bear, which refers to the Medo-Persians, then a leopard with 4 wings, which symbolizes the Greeks, and a 4th with iron teeth and 10 horns, referring to the Roman Empire, which will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. Well, that definitely refers to the Roman Empire. They did take over the whole known world and ruled it with fists of iron. And so anyway, this vision is one that Daniel himself has, and he also gets to interpret that, and he interprets it as these four things, these four nation or empires that are to come, the same empires that the vision of Nebuchadnezzar of the man with the iron or the golden head and all that. It's referring to the same things. And today, especially, people take Daniel and especially this part and try to, okay, the bear is Russia, and they apply all this to modern times and try and say that, yeah, now we're in the part where we have this fourth beast with iron teeth and 10 horns, and they try to apply, and they have names for, each one is somebody. Now you can't keep up with them because they change it all the time. When things come and go, it doesn't go like they thought it should, then they reinterpret it and make it refer to stuff. But anyway, Daniel is really abused by the modern premillennialists. Anyway, then it says in Daniel, it says, another horn with the eyes of a man appears to him, and is this referring to the Antichrist? This guy that wrote this is questioning. He will speak against the Most High and oppress the saints, but his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. This is from Daniel 7:26. Well, Daniel sees God sitting on a throne, and there before me was one like the Son of Man, which is referring to the Messiah, coming with the clouds of heaven. Now, coming with the clouds of heaven, that's also a phrase that we're going to see in Matthew 24 and in the book of Revelation as well. It's not anything new to these people. When it talks about coming with the clouds of heaven, he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting kingdom that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. And so this refers to Jesus and his coming. And we'll talk more about that when we look at more preliminary stuff for the book of Revelation. And then Daniel has another dream involving a ram with two horns. That's Medo-Persia, the Medes and the Persians, which is attacked by a goat with one horn, which is referring to Greece. And the angel Gabriel explains it to him. So Gabriel, an angel, explains this prophecy to him, and it prophesies the division of the Greek Empire into four parts and the rise of another king, which, as we look at history, it refers to Antiochus IV, who's called Epiphanes. Anyway, this is in the intertestament period between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and there's a group of people called the Seleucids. When the Greek Empire starts splitting up after Alexander the Great, he had four sons, and he split the kingdom between these four guys, and so the empire essentially crumbled because there really was nobody over the whole thing. Anyway, the Seleucids were one of those four, and they had a leader that was named Antiochus, and he's the one that had to do with everything that happened in Palestine or Israel just before Jesus came, just before the Roman Empire and the time of Christ. Anyway, this is another dream of Daniel. And the angel Gabriel appears to Daniel in answer to his prayers and prophesies that Jerusalem will be rebuilt. The anointed one will come. And this is 483 years. He puts in quotes there, or in brackets. and later he'll be cut off, and that means killed. And we know it was by crucifixion. The city and the sanctuary will be destroyed. Now, that shouldn't surprise anybody when Jesus says it's going to be destroyed in Matthew 24, and then it is destroyed in 70 AD. This is prophesied in Daniel as well. And says he will set up an abomination. There will be set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured on them. Now, the abomination of desolation in Daniel is the same abomination of desolation that's found in Matthew 24, which we'll be looking at. Anyway, I just keep pointing these things out that we'll be looking at, just to help you see and to make you aware that so many things from the New Testament are based on statements in the Old Testament, and we don't want to misapply them, but apply them the way the New Testament writers are applying them. Okay, so one more page on Daniel. In 539 BC, an angel appears to Daniel and prophesies additional Persian kings and then also Alexander and the division of his kingdom into the Ptolemaic, Seleucid, and two other parts. Antiochus Epiphanes, who set up an altar to Zeus, and the rise of the Antichrist. And he keeps questioning this, Marcus. Whoever wrote this, I don't think he's sure what that refers to, but it's going against Jesus, who will eventually kill him. Anyway, all this is eventually to come to an end, and at that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise, and there will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from before the beginning of the nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, and some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. And this is the first clear reference in the Bible to a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So that's what this guy has to say about the book of Daniel. I'm sure we'll be talking about more things more of Daniel as we look at the book of Revelation as well, because so much of that is referring back to Daniel. Any questions about Daniel? All right, well, the next one we're going to look at is we're going to be looking at the minor prophets. And the minor prophets aren't really minor in importance. They're just smaller books. And that's, I guess that minor prophets is not a biblical term. It's what we call them, just, I guess, to differentiate the long books compared to the short ones. Anyway, the first of the minor prophets is Hosea. We've got a few minutes. We'll look at Hosea. I'm just going to look. Yeah, there's only 2 pages on Hosea. He wrote in 750 BC. Now, when was the first captivity of the Assyrians? Anybody remember? 722 BC. So 750 BC is almost 30 years before that. So Hosea is before the Assyrians ever even went into, or the Assyrian captivity ever even happened. Israel was still in part of the nation of Israel. Divided. It was a divided kingdom, but divided between Israel and Judah. So as you can tell from this, the Bible is not in chronological order necessarily. Some of it is, some of it isn't. These prophets especially, you have to put them where they fit in. And so now we're dropping back to before any of the captivities with the book of Hosea. And he wrote about 750 BC, and he wrote for about 38 years. He came from the northern kingdom, so he was part of the northern kingdom himself. And he was the only prophet who wrote anything down that was from Israel. And this says, but probably wrote in Judah after the fall of the northern capital of Samaria. And we don't know that for sure. But Assyria destroyed Israel during Hoshea's reign. That was King Hoshea, not Hosea, in 722. But Hosea receives the word of God, who tells him to take. Here's the part that makes Hosea distinctive. The word of the Lord comes to Hosea, and he tells him to take an adulterous wife. Her name is Gomer. And so this woman is not going to be faithful to Hosea, but she's going to conceive unfaithful children, sons of another man named Jezreel. Pardon me. She's going to have a son and two daughters. The son is named Jezreel, one daughter. All right, let me get this straight. She's going to have three children, two sons, Jezreel and Lo-Ammi, and a daughter named Lo-Ruhamah. Now, Lo-Ammi means not my people. And so when he names them not my people, this is a message to the Israelites, or the people of Israel. You are not my people. But then the daughter is named Lo-Ruhamah, which means just forgot. Well, no mercy. I think it is no mercy, but for some reason I was thinking it was something else. So from these children, he's telling them, you're not my people, and I'm not going to have mercy on you. And Israel has been unfaithful, like Hosea's wife, just like Hosea's wife was unfaithful. Israel has been unfaithful, and the children and is to be punished like an adulteress. Again, we have now this vision of a harlot, or an unfaithful wife, and so he's likening Israel to that as well. So this is a second prophet who's using the same reference of an unfaithful woman to describe Israel. And God tells him to buy Gomer back from slavery, which he does, and he foretells the punishment of Israel, after which they will seek David their king. The priests have sinned and misled the people, and the men have consorted with harlots and sacrificed with shrine prostitutes. I mean, this is how bad it got in Israel. They had just like the Corinthians had the shrine prostitutes, they were having this back in the 700 BC. And then, and the Israelites were partaking of that. And Hosea says their deeds did not permit them to return to God. God doesn't want them to come back because of how bad they're being. Hosea calls for repentance, saying God will punish Israel. They offer human sacrifice and kiss the calf idols. Therefore, they will be like the morning dew that disappears, like chaff swirling from a threshing floor, like smoke escaping through a window. And so they're going to all dissipate. The nation of Israel is going to come apart, and that's exactly what happened. They went into Assyrian captivity, and then just like smoke, they disappeared and never really came back as a nation. And so it says, in the midst of God's diatribe against Israel, he apparently promises redemption from death. He says, I will ransom them from the power of the grave, and I will redeem them from death. Where, O death, are your plagues? Where, O grave, is your destruction? I will be like the dew to Israel, and he will blossom like a lily. And so there is a ray of hope at the end of the book of Hosea. And he doesn't quote it here, but in the end of the book of Hosea, the girl's name, or the two children's names are changed to Ami, which means my people, and mercy, which taking the no off of it, showing that there'll come a time when God will be merciful to these people, and it's to whatever remnant comes back, and ultimately it's to the people that obey the gospel, starting with the preaching of it. And where we read in Acts 2, there were people from those areas. Some of them were some of those people, and the Samaritans also were some of those people that had managed to filter their way back from Assyrian captivity into the area of Samaria. Anyway, that's just a little synopsis of the book of Hosea. And next week, we'll talk about the rest of the minor prophets. And right, it's time to stop right now. So anybody have a comment or a question? If not, I shouldn't apologize, but I do apologize a bit for all the reading. I don't usually like to do that. I'd rather say it myself from my head, but there's just so much information here. Anyway, that's enough apology. So in 15 minutes, we'll meet back together for our worship service.